Well, good evening, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and kick off tonight's Be Your Own Boss Bowl workshop focused on market opportunity and competitive landscape. And the underlying message here is do your research. My name is Greg Fegley. I'm the director of the Accelerator programs here at the IEI. And I'm going to just cover a few quick things before we turn the program over to our guest speaker tonight. And then I'll introduce him. I just wanted to cover 5 quick steps for you. If you're interested or thinking about participating in the Be Your Own Boss Bowl program this year, the first thing I'd encourage you to do is to get started by signing up on our community platform for entrepreneurship here at Temple. That's called Startup Tree. You can do that using the QR code on the screen. And the reason I'd like you to do that is because it's a great way to get information, to get access to our shared resources folders, also to see the upcoming events. And it's also where you're going to be actually submitting to the competition. And we'd like you to be a member on the platform to submit to the competition. Makes the communications back and forth a lot simpler for both parties. So I'd encourage you to do that. Second step would be, once you've joined Startup Tree, is go in. You'll be able to easily find with this QR code the page on Startup Tree for the 25th annual Be Your Own Boss Bowl. And I'd encourage you to click the Enter Now button to create your draft. All right, this is not going to be submitting to the competition yet. There's still a lot of things that you probably need to work on, documents you need to produce in order to complete your submission, but create a draft, and then that way we know that you're interested in actually participating and submitting. Third step is take advantage of all the great resources that we've already pulled together and curated for you in our shared submissions resource folder on our Google Drive. In there, you'll find templates for the various documents that are part of the submission, examples of submissions and tips on how to do them, the eligibility policies, links to the video recordings of these workshops. So I see a lot of new names on the Zoom tonight. And if you've missed our previous workshops, by going in here, you'll be able to get access to those previous recordings to rewatch them. You also have access to the slide decks for those workshops. We also have the judges scoring rubric, which is really important so that you know exactly what the judges are looking for and how they're going to score your submission, and then other important information. Step 4 is get help mentoring. All right, go and sign up with one of over 100 mentors that are on our Startup Tree platform. They're all there, willing to help you, provide feedback to you on your idea, and to help you get your submission ready. All right, so please take advantage of that. And again, if you use this QR code, it'll take you to the listing of over 100 mentors on Startup Tree. And if you have any issues or problems, you're stuck, you don't know how to access these people, or they're not getting back to you, or even if you just like some help on trying to pick one, please feel free to reach out to me at greg.fegley@temple.edu, or just email BYOBB@temple.edu, and we'll be able to give you some help. The last step here is attending these workshops. So for those of you here, if this is your first workshop tonight, I hope you get a lot out of this. I think you will. Again, go back and look at the previous workshops. We have 2 more workshops coming up, one next Wednesday, which will be all about preparing your financial projections and the assumptions, going through the process, how to think it through, how to put them together for the submission. And the QR code here will take you to the website on Startup Tree to register for that next workshop on March 1st. And then on Thursday, March 16th, will be our last workshop, The Art Not Science of Pitching. And we have a guest speaker coming in for that one as well. It's going to be a great workshop. So I hope you'll attend our last 2 workshops here. There are plenty of other resources and key dates for you to be aware of. We have, again, our mentoring hours with our mentors on Startup Tree. We have 2 special mentoring events coming up on the 15th and the 20th. The 15th is from 12 to 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and it's in person in the 1810 Accelerator space. The one on the 20th, Expert Mentoring Night, is going to be virtual on Zoom. You can register for both of those. Come in on the 20th. You'll be able to go into breakout rooms with our various expert mentors that night and get your last minute questions answered before the submission deadline. All right. So I want to move on to our topic for tonight, and that's doing your research regarding markets, customers, and competitors. So this is usually an area, that really stumps students and alums, people that are interested in competing, because there's a lot of information you really do need to research and pull together to be able to present a solid foundation for taking your idea and turning it into a viable business. All right, so focused on the market side, what is your target market? How big is it? Do you have multiple market segments? And which one should you prioritize? But trying to figure out what they are, and then the sizing of them. Are those markets growing? Are they shrinking? How to get access to that data of how big it is can often be very challenging. In the area of customers, so who are your customers and users, and what motivates them to take action? Who might be the early adopters that you would identify in your customer pool? And then last but not least, for tonight at least, is your competitors. All right, what are the overlaps and gaps? So everyone has competitors. And if I would challenge any of you on the call tonight, that if you think that you are in an industry or you have an idea where there's no competition, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you about that, because it's a common mistake for people to come into a competition and say, well, I have no competitors. It just means you haven't looked hard enough yet, because there's always competitors, and they may not be direct competitors, they might be indirect competitors or alternates or substitutes. But it's important that you acknowledge that, because that's something investors, prospective investors, look for. And then what are the overlaps and gaps between what you're proposing to offer and what they're offering? That's really important. There's a lot to learn from that. But then also, what are they good at? And then how are you better than them? And being able to get access to that kind of information, again, can be a challenge. So that leads us to introducing our guest speaker tonight, Mr. Adam Shambaugh, the Business Librarian at the Temple University Business Library. Adam has been a fantastic resource for the IEI for many, many years. He is a perennial guest speaker for our Be Your Own Boss Bowl program and our Business Accelerator program called Startup Studio. He adds tremendous value in being able to unlock some of the keys, some of those things that are really hard to get at. And so we've invited him here again tonight to talk with you, to see if he can answer questions for you on how to get access to this kind of information, and then also to share with you all the tools that are available in the Temple Business Library that you have access to, and how to use them, which ones are the right tools to use, because it's important to have the right tools for the right job. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam. I'll stop sharing my screen. And thank you, Adam, for being with us tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Greg. So again, before I get started with sharing slides and other resources, just want to highlight a little bit about my role, my background, and how I can assist you with submitting to the Be Your Own Boss Bowl. So I work as Temple Library's liaison to the Fox School, to the College of Sport, Tourism, and Hospitality Management. And I'm also kind of the entrepreneurship guy. So there's a lot of entrepreneurship activity happening at Temple, both among current students, alumni, and faculty and staff, and in the North Philadelphia community. So I have a good deal of experience working with entrepreneurs and prospective small business owners from really diverse backgrounds. And I have access to and experience with secondary research tools that can really help you understand the competitive landscape of the industry you're interested in, as well as understand market size, consumer behavior, demographics of target populations, et cetera. So I'm going to cover a lot of that this evening. For those of you who are here, I should say that this is not your one and only chance to understand everything there is to know about business research. I am available for consultations or quick emails to go further in depth with the very specialized and diverse areas that you all are working in. Before I begin with kind of a structured presentation, I want to give everyone here an opportunity to share out what it is you're working on, the industry that you're interested in, maybe a little bit about your idea, so that I can tailor my own presentation and examples to meet and be relevant to the kinds of work that you all are doing. So if anyone is interested, willing, brave to share out, super willing to kind of try to be nimble and dynamic and flex a little bit and provide examples of resources and tools that will be directly relevant to the kinds of things that you're doing. So, and you can unmute yourself, you can raise your hand, you can throw something in the chat, however it is you feel comfortable doing that. And I would kindly ask Greg to monitor the chat or...
I will.
Awesome. Any takers?
I don't see any hands yet.
All right.
Or chats.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Pearline Sturdivant, and I am a Fox School of Business alumni 2002, but I'm also a recent, 2021 graduate of College of Education.
Okay.
With my doctorate degree in educational leadership. However, currently I am working on, I am a published author, a poet. I'm currently working on my brand titled Spoken Word of a Pearl, whereas it actually would be not just poetry. I have 3 published books out there, but I also am trying to work on just building the brand. I am actually in the last phase, couple of last phases of building the brand with the trademark, with the getting my trademark. So I'm just working on better getting my, brand out there. How would I, in this volatile market, how would I actually, I've started it, but how would I actually get my brand totally out of there? I've actually also, not just with books, I've also had like sweatshirts and things of that sort. So I'm more or less like a poet, but at the same token, I am a individual who is in the last phases of getting my brand with the Copyright Office for the United States.
So it really sounds, it sounds like, if I may, it sounds like what you're working on is really has kind of an interesting mix of traditional industries like book publishing, merchandising, things like that, with kind of more emerging ideas like probably social media would be an element with what you're working on. And of course, this idea of personal branding, building a personal brand. And I think there are a number of resources, and I can touch on those that would address some of those traditional and newer industries. And I can talk about those as well. So thank you.
You're welcome. And then just one last thing also, I am I guess it's a new term out, like an educational entrepreneur.
Okay.
And I'm trying to actually get in the market with that as well, with some consultation work.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's something that I'm encountering more and more in my work is, it used to be that at Temple, so much of the entrepreneurship activities were centered for and around Fox. And it's exciting to see with IEI and other entities on campus, people are looking towards entrepreneurship in the arts and sciences and in education and other spaces. So I'm really excited to work with and collaborate with folks from outside of traditional kind of business channels as well.
Thank you.
Other folks?
Hey, good evening.
Hello.
You guys can hear me? Hey,
Yeah.
how are you doing, man? I'm a small business owner. I've been with it for a while. The crazy thing is, before I came to Temple Fox School of Business, there was a Temple association that used to do some business for helping you with small business government, getting into the governments. I think they're called Temple SDA or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was with them. I found them through the an association in Philly a couple of years ago, but I used to work with them to write grant and get into the government and business space. The biggest challenge at being in business over these years, the biggest challenge is funding. A small business funding. We have gone through a number of different things. I started my MBA primarily to get, because I was driven by the technology. I know the technology. I didn't know nothing about business. So now, after 15 years in business, I'm trying to learn business as opposed to making the technology drive me. So that's pretty much what I'm about. I'm trying to learn more about funding and other avenues out there. That's
okay. Can you tell me maybe a little bit about what industry you're working in? Or
IT. So I work in IT and primarily in doing networking, design, and security for small, medium-sized businesses.
Perfect. Thank you. Other folks?
Even if you just want to share your industry, it might be helpful then for Adam, because many of the resource tools or tools that he has within Temple, have a focus on whatever the industry is. It might
Actually
change.
I see a familiar name in the chat. I'm working on a new area, which is apparel related items, and then also personal care items. And I can talk a little bit dealing with populations that are experiencing homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of has an entrepreneurial component that deals with kind of altruistic, or I'm not retrieving the right word on the fly because I'm not good at this, but working with populations experiencing homelessness and personal care items. So I will address that. Thank you. And other stuff.
You see the
Genetic tests. Yep. All right. Thank you, Bernardo. All right. It gives me a little bit to go on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and kind of do a presentation that's sort of informed by some of those ideas. If things are confusing, or you're not sure where to go, or if I talk too fast, feel free to interrupt me. And also I'll just ask that Greg keep an eye on the chat. I know he's good at that, so good for that. So definitely, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of background, a little bit of context, and then I'm going to jump in and talk about some of the key resources. And I should say about Temple databases and these electronic resources, don't kill the messenger. So if you are currently a Temple student or Temple staff member, you have access to these resources remotely. Unfortunately, that is not true if you are an alum, or if you are not currently affiliated with the university. What I should say to you, however, is that I strongly encourage you to reach out to me if that's the case, or even if it's not the case. I'm happy to help get the information to you that you need, particularly for analyzing markets, helping develop content for your pitch deck, etc. I'm happy to make sure that even if you don't have official off-campus access, that you have the information that you need. So just be aware of that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I already mentioned and introduced myself, but I want to make sure that you know how to get in touch with me. There's two ways to do that. You can contact me directly at adams@temple.edu, or you can reach out to me through the libraries at library.temple.edu. There's a contact us link, which I will show you. And I'll also talk to you about consultations and chat and the number of different ways that you can get in touch with me or other folks in the library. And I've just dropped my glasses. Give me 1 second. All right, so the big takeaways for this evening, if first and foremost, I want you to know how to go to the library's website, how to access our electronic resources and some of our research guides. And even to Merrick's comment, some of these resources and funding resources, they're not necessarily library tools. I've tried to compile within these library research guides that I've created a mix of Temple-specific tools, subscription databases, as well as some of the free government sites and other resources. So I'll talk a bit about those. I want you to be able to find market, industry, and competitor information, as well as journals and articles. I think where information is found can really vary a lot. Some industries have very traditional long format, in-depth industry reports that are kind of like a slam dunk. Other industries are more niche or more specialized or kind of emerging industries. You may need to do a little deeper digging, that's what I'm trying to say, to get to those industries. I think we can get to the bottom of that, and I'll talk to you about some kind of pro tips for doing that. And then I mentioned this already, but requesting assistance from a librarian. I'm the business guy. That's kind of my background in the libraries. There are, however, folks on staff who have backgrounds in the sciences and in healthcare. Bernardo's last question about genetic testing. I wouldn't be surprised if some of my colleagues at the Health Sciences Library would be able to provide some good insights for a project like that. So there's just a wide variety of people on staff who can assist you with myriad areas of interest. I want to just say a quick word, since I just used the word databases already 10 times probably. When I use the word database, I'm talking about a very kind of library specific sort of thing. I know sometimes, depending on the industry that you're in or your background, you might think of a database as a very specific tool. In the case of libraries, I'm just merely referring to any kind of organized collection of information that's available to you electronically on a subscription basis. And I've already alluded to this. Some of these are very discipline specific, others are more general, really high quality content, and unfortunately kind of closed content if you're not a Temple affiliate. But I'm here to serve as sort of a conduit between you and these paywalls to get you the information that you need, and we'll talk more about that. These are the tools that I think everyone should know about, and this is tip of the iceberg, seriously, because we don't have all night, and none of us want that anyway. But the key databases that I think everyone should be aware of, CB Insights is a collection of private company information that includes things like venture capital funding. So thinking about, everyone's concern, and mentioned by Merrick, but I'm sure on everyone's mind is this issue of funding. And CB Insights is really cool in that you can look at very small private companies that are otherwise difficult to gain intelligence about and see where their funding came from, what VCs or other entities were involved in their early stage development. You can see funding cycles, and you can get competitive information, competitor information. So I want you all to be aware of that resource. As far as understanding markets is concerned, there are a number of tools that will help you with that. Simply Analytics is a tool that incorporates a lot of mapping and GIS and geospatial data into looking at demographic and consumer information. So Simply Analytics is really, it's also a unique source in that it provides very geographically specific information. So if you're looking at Philadelphia neighborhoods, if you're looking at census tracts, if you're comparing metropolitan areas, you can do that at a pretty granular level. So that's a really cool thing. Sort of on the other end of that is a resource like Euromonitor, which has a lot of international information. So if anyone on the call is doing any kind of international thing, maybe you're doing business overseas, or maybe you have imports, exports, concerns or other things, Euromonitor can shed a lot of light on these international markets, but it is not specific to those markets, i.e. there is good US data within the resource. So you should be aware of that also. For articles, and I love looking at articles and combing through articles to get the dirt on industries, competitors, markets that maybe wouldn't be found otherwise. Two places to do that are Business Source Complete and Google Scholar. I mentioned Google Scholar because peer-reviewed content, though it's kind of heavy and academic, it can be really good for things like technology, science, fields that you're likely involved in that could really be useful. It may be that academics are where, sort of at the forefront of analyzing that. And then I also want to mention industry research with IBISWorld. IBISWorld is my go-to place for understanding the whole scope of an industry, which I think is really essential for understanding all the different facets of starting a business and looking at competitive landscape, markets, et cetera. And I also mentioned these guides at guides.temple.edu. There are 3 guides in particular. You can get to all of these guides from that main URL and from the library's homepage. So guides.temple.edu, or just click on research guides once you get to the library site. And one is for market research, one is small business development, and then one is a super free-for-all database or a guide of business research. I'll say more about each of those when I get to it. So I'm going to hop out of this slide deck and go over to the library's main page. Again, this is library.temple.edu. And for starters, when you are on this page, there's a link right here that says Contact Us. And we mean it. So we are on chat 24/7. Most of the time during the day and into the evening, that would be Temple's staff, but we also have partnered with some international and West Coast librarians to monitor this 24/7. So if you have questions, if you need assistance, we are not Chat GPT, we are actually human, and we are still monitoring this that way. The AI is coming, make no mistake, but for the time being, you can talk to an actual librarian anytime, day or night. The other thing I want you to be aware of under this Contact Us page is the staff directory. So I've already mentioned the variety of expertise that you can find within the libraries. And again, if I don't know about a certain area, an academic discipline, et cetera, I can certainly call upon colleagues to get you the information that you need. And one of the things you'll see if you go and look for me on this site is there's a way to schedule an appointment with me. If you have questions, if you need to talk through some challenges, if you need more specialized information that I don't get to tonight, you can definitely reach out to me either at adams@temple.edu. You can email me through the Contact Us link, or you can schedule an appointment and I just put my hours, we can Zoom. You don't even need to reach out to me. You can just schedule that appointment automatically and I'll get a notification. All right, so here's where I actually dive into some of these sources, some of this information. And again, all of this is at library.temple.edu, and you can find this information under databases. The other thing I'll be talking about in a little bit is the research guides, which are right under that link. Again, I'll just say if you have questions, if something's not clear, throw it in the chat, or just go for it and unmute yourself and interrupt me. I'm not averse to that at all. So, but I want to just kind of talk about and touch on some of the key resources here. And the first one that I mentioned to you earlier is CB Insights. So CB Insights is, there's starting to be other resources that do similar things. Crunchbase is an example of that. PitchBook is another one. But CB Insights, I think, is kind of it's the resource we have, and I think it's a very good one for looking at private company startup information. So a couple things to know about this. If you're a Temple student, you can register with your TU mail address and get into this. And it is a little tricky, and there's sort of a purgatory phase. But again, if you have questions or need help, hit me up. And of course, if you're not affiliated with the university at the moment, you're an alum or don't have a Temple affiliation, that's okay as well. Reach out to me. You will not be able to view this unless you come on campus, but I'm happy to help you and work through this just like I am right now. So I'm going to give you just an example. Well, I'll just show you what I'm looking at right now. This is my landing page. You can customize it. And some of the things that I have here is a listing of funders. So these are people I'm interested in because they've funded areas of business that I'm interested in, or some of my clients are interested in. The second column here are specific companies that I follow, and a lot of them are in the sort of machine learning space. And you can see things about these companies, i.e. who have they recently acquired, and funding sources, et cetera. You see UiPath, which actually has had an IPO and is now a public company. This is a robotic process automation company. You can get a lot of good information about different companies. And then there's also a way to follow different industries. Within this database, the best thing to do is do a simple search. So I don't have a good example of a relevant company to anything that folks mentioned, but I will just give an example of a Philly company here. This is a GoPuff, which was started by some Drexel students about a little over a decade ago. This company is not public, but you will see the robust amount of information that's available. And what I'll say is it's good to type in what you're searching for and let this little drop-down menu auto-populate. We can jump over here and see a lot of information about this company, but you'll see the sort of general format of an IBIS World or of a CB Insights report. And some of the things that you'll note, looking at the market share information and this company's competitors, I think this is really, really cool that it provides you with a list of this company, GoPuff, which is an on-demand and ultra-fast delivery platform. Companies that do that as well. So some of them, like Instacart, be very, very well known, others less so. I think it's really good that you can very quickly identify some of the key competitors. What I can say about how students have used this, or how entrepreneurs have used this, if you aren't sure where to begin, if you don't know of a company that does what you're doing, this is where Google is your friend. I had a student, I can say this, he's a very public person, who was starting a vegan leather company and needed to find his competitors and find information about his competitors. This was a few years ago, right before the pandemic. We Googled and found some good leads, and then we went back to CB Insights and we searched for the names of those companies. This was before he even started, and we knew half a dozen companies who were doing similar things, not dead ringer exact things, but who were in a similar space. And this allowed him to identify potential funders and individuals who he could reach out to and partner with. and potentially receive funding from. And he was able to do that. And I think that's some way that a lot of small business owners, small business developers have proceeded with this. Other things that you'll see, there is formal list, media mentions. So if you are looking at, how a company, what their presence is like on Twitter, how other people, bloggers, as well as more traditional channels like trade journals are writing about a company or an industry, understanding the emerging trends, this is the place to go to get that information as well. So lots of good information. I use GoPuff as an example because they have they've been around for 10 years or more. So there's a good example. Oh, and I mentioned also the stages of funding and deal history. This is all included within CB Insights also. So this is a great way to kind of get a leg up on potential competitors and understand what they're doing, who they partner with, and what kinds of connections they have. So that's my first recommendation for you guys. All right, I'm going to go back to the databases list, and I'm going to focus less on competitors and more on markets. And to do that, I'm going to search for Simply Analytics. And this resource, you can sign in as a guest, but I advise against it because you're going to be generating pretty lengthy reports here. So I would recommend creating an account. If you're a Temple affiliate, go for it. Again, if you're not, you can contact me. I should say that I teach an hour-long workshop on this database. So despite its name, it's not always so simple. There's a lot you can do with it. It's pretty darn complicated. But I want you all to be aware of this because it does things that no other resource we have does. And that is particularly the geographic component of this tool is really awesome. So when you get into this, you don't even know what to do, where to go, which way is up, begin by creating a new project. And if you have done that before, you can view your projects over here, but I'm going to start with a new project. All right. So I'm here, and the first thing it wants you to do is identify a location, which can seem a little constricting if you don't care about a specific location, but don't worry about that because I will show you how to alter or modify that later on. The next thing it's going to ask you to do is to input some seed variables. And the reason why is because you don't want to have a blank report to start out with. So I like these variables, they're fine. This is educational attainment and median household income, right? So I'm going to go ahead and plug those in. And here I get a nice map of Philadelphia because that's what I selected. It is going to default to the zip code level as my geographic unit. I can, however, change that. And it's showing one of my two variables, in this case, educational attainment. And using this drop-down menu, I can do a switcheroo here and look at my other variable, which is median household income. Now, for anyone who's been around Philadelphia, you know where the money is and where it's not. So this isn't a big shocking map. But the things that you can add to and do with this map, I think are really fascinating. And the way that you modify and look at tools within this resource is to go over here and do a search either under these individual tiles, or you can actually go in and see the data sources that are available. So Census Bureau stuff, that kind of thing is available to you. However, there's also some more specialized stuff through MRI, which is a big market research outfit. So I'm gonna give you a couple examples. So thinking about, let me make sure, and this is a guess, by the way, because I really don't know. I want to look at some indicators. So I will start with poverty because I'm thinking about the question of homelessness and people who are experiencing homelessness. So I tend to like to look at, when I'm doing these things, percentages rather than numbers. And I will, let me just say, yeah, total. All right. Okay, yeah, so we'll look at this number right here, which is the total under the poverty line. I think that's the question that I'm looking at. This is from the American Community Survey. So I will use that. And this will give me an example, kind of horrifying and a little depressing, but examples of individuals experiencing poverty or percentages. I should say that you can modify this key here to change the thresholds of each category. You can alter colors and you can export this. So if you're building a pitch deck and you want to show something to a potential funder or a potential partner, you can export visualizations from this database fairly easily. And there's a number of things that you can do over here. There's an actions link here, and this will allow you to do some of that stuff. And you can change your boundaries and alter the look of it. And then there's an export link over here, which allows you, again, to export this map as a JPEG file once you've kind of modified it and looked at it accordingly. Other things that you can look at, let's say we take a look at, this is going to be a long shot, but why not? We'll just give it a go and see what happens. It says it's searching. No dice. All right. This is what happens when you kind of do a stump the chump. You don't always get what you want. I'm kind of interested in this. Okay. So this link here. Oh, wow. Okay. So this is the percentage of the population in group quarters. Non-institutionalized population, and this is related to Jadaman's question about individuals experiencing homelessness and reaching out to that population. This could be a way to target a certain demographic. In this case, I've demonstrated to you some pretty kind of this is kind of a demographic example. It's not, obviously it's not a consumer market example. This is more about looking at sort of a social situation within a community. But I think it really drives home the point that there's a lot of great business to consumer information in this resource. But even if you have a business idea that is not directly B2C, but has social implications, you can use it to find a lot of information about consumers or populations. I'll give you kind of a more, well, let me think. I'm just kind of thinking about let's say we'll look at hospital visits. Yeah, let's say we'll just do a simple search for medical. And you can see all the different variables that are included here. Some of these are more specific kind of information about populations and things that individuals have experienced. You can also see employers, and you can also track businesses. That's the other thing I wanted to mention within this resource. If you are looking for brick and mortar physical businesses or company headquarters, you can go here and situate plots on a map that gives you information specifically to that for that area. So a couple other things that you could do. You could look at a variable like public transportation, and you could see, all right, impact mass transit, public transportation. So you could search for that. You could also, and I would also say sometimes you need to search for multiple variables until you get what you want. And you can see transportation to work. So percentage of folks who took public transportation. And again, you would expect this to be the case that the further you get into the city, the more folks you see taking public transportation, and it kind of peters out as you get further out into the suburbs. So there's just thousands, tens of thousands of variables. And I think if you were to sit down with me or to play with this yourself, you'd be able to figure out the different tools and things that you could look at. Other things that you can do with this, if you are interested in looking in other geographic areas, you could go here, and I'm just going to add another big city, and we could see how Philadelphia compares to Atlanta on a number of different axes. And mapping is only one thing that this database does. There's a number of ways that you can look at this to or explore different variables. The ones I think that are really important for, in my experience working with entrepreneurs, the first is a comparison table, which I've already sort of touched on a little bit. When you have a data variable, you can just keep expanding locations. I've already mentioned Atlanta. I will put that in again, and you can see that that will just keep adding. You can just keep adding locations. It does not have to be cities. It can be specific zip codes. So we could put in Temple zip code. So you can just kind of keep playing around with this in any which way that you want. The other thing that you can do is rankings. Ranking table will allow you to rank geographic units by a certain criteria. So whether it's, poverty, whether it's how many people bought a certain product or have a certain attitude or lifestyle, that could be easily done within this resource. Those are really good tools to know about. The other thing that you can do, some of the other resources, business counts, I think is really helpful. If you need to see a listing of businesses, you can have those plotted on a map, or you can look at it as a spreadsheet. And all of those data are exportable. So if you need to take them to Excel, there's a lot of different ways that you can use this resource to gain insight about communities, very specific small communities, or big comparisons between different locations all throughout the United States. So that's another resource I highly recommend using. Again, that is Simply Analytics. Moving forward, I'm going to talk about industry research. Actually, before I do that, I want to mention more information about markets. And the next database that I want you to be aware of is Euromonitor. And Euromonitor is a resource that covers, if I can type, international sources as well as US sources. And unlike Simply Analytics, it's a very straightforward resource as far as searching is concerned. You can just go in and do a keyword search. It provides you with both quantitative information as well as analysis. So it's not just data. So I'm going to do a simple search for an industry of interest, and my search will be for electronics. I'm going to go here, and the first thing that I see is that there, in the middle of the screen, there's this drop-down menu for analysis, or this category for analysis. And you can see the international focus of this resource spanning all over the world, really good country level coverage, but maybe you're not interested in that. Say you're only interested in the United States, that information is available here as well. And I think this would be a good resource for a lot of people to look at, whether you're in a consumer industry or more of a business to business industry. But this report about wearable technology or wearable electronics for the United States is pretty exemplary of a Euromonitor report, in that it's providing you with quantitative information and interactive graphics, but it also gives you good analysis about this industry. And I think thinking about markets and competition, I think this is a really good place to go to look at this kind of and get information along those lines. The other thing that you'll see within this resource is a category of data graphics. And this, again, is specific graphics, specific quantitative information about a given industry for the geography that you have chosen. So pretty unique in terms of getting this information. And then also context. I just want to mention this. You can see that because we've looked at the United States, it also provides you with some international context because of the nature of the resource. So if you want to look at kind of the international scope or landscape of this technology sector, you can do that within this resource. Another way that you can use Euromonitor is to not gain specific industry information, but to gain country level information. And I'll give you an example of that just quickly. So if I go in and I do a search for Mexico and I go over to statistics, I'm going to look at the full scope of those. It's easy to find information about a country from the CIA World Factbook or whatever, but that information is not necessarily going to be focused on markets or some of the kind of consumer lifestyles and demographics that are available to you. So I think it's good for anyone who has an international component to their project, whether it's marketing to or partnering with a foreign market. Euromonitor is really good for that also, but it is, just be aware, not limited to international stuff. There's good US data within this resource as well. So those are kind of three resources that will give you information about competition and consumer markets. That's Simply Analytics, CB Insights, and Euromonitor. I want to also mention to you the place to go to get industry information. That is IBIS World, or IBIS, my IBIS World. This is my sort of best bang for your buck industry research tool. And I'm going to just go in, and with this resource, you don't need any kind of specialized knowledge of industry codes or anything like that. You can simply do a search, and I'm going to search for book publishing in the US. All right. And this is related to Perlene's kind of area of interest. She's looking at, or one of her many sort of multifaceted areas is publishing, which she's already has some experience with. As you can imagine, book publishing is a changing landscape and involves a lot of disruption. This industry report, which is how all the reports in IBIS World are formatted, are going to give you a lot of good insight. I think this industry at a glance link, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see how diverse and fragmented this industry is. There's only a few big publishers. I bet 20 years ago, this is a very different looking chart. Some of the things that you can also see, just an executive summary that gives you a breakdown of the current situation within a given industry. The industry performance link, what are the industry drivers? What are the big external forces acting on your industry? And how does that impact you? And what are the considerations that you need to take into consideration? So, decline of brick and mortar stores, that's an obvious trend, COVID-19 and its impact, et cetera. And then, the online issue, which of course is massive. The other thing, and I won't get into every single one of these, but I wanted to mention competitive landscape, since that's something that we're focusing on this evening. Looking at the competitive landscape for an industry, I think is really going to be important to consider that. And then the operating conditions, and this are sort of things like supply chain, all this stuff. I would say that, for a lot of folks, you might say, well, either I already know this or I don't need to know this. My rebuttal to that would be, you really can demonstrate to your audience, be it potential partners or funding sources, that you understand the ins and outs of your industry in a very systematic and quantitative way when you have this kind of information that's readily presentable to them. So that's something I just strongly encourage you to consider. And I think that's why a resource like IBIS World, that doesn't necessarily deal specifically with consumer markets, but has a lot of other content, can be really valuable to you. Just want to give you maybe another example of this. If we're back at the main search page, you can also just search in the upper right corner. I'm going to put in IT security and just see, okay, IT consulting security, IT security consulting in the US. So this is a good example of just kind of how cool this database is in terms of having a very current industry report about a non-traditional industry, something that probably didn't exist, for too long. And it's structured exactly the same way as the previous very traditional industry report is. And it's going to get into all those issues that I mentioned before, such as competitive landscape and industry drivers and things like that. So I think it's a really good way to look at and understand any type of industry, be it B2B or B2C or emerging industries, et cetera. Great resource to take a look at. One of the other things I want to mention, and this is new with IBIS World, is this industry search. Under this link, there are now state level reports, and it's getting, in my estimate, more and more robust in terms of the number of industries that are covered at the state level within IBIS World. So it used to be that they gave you a very broad US-based analysis, but they're starting to look at and take into consideration state-specific industries and across a wide area of sectors. So again, I would recommend looking at the US level report for your industry, but then also under industry search, check out the state level reports, because you might also find some region specific stuff that's relevant to you as well. So IBIS World, really great resource for understanding all the different facets of industry. Last thing I want to mention in terms of databases is article searching and the value and the importance of searching different types of articles by secondary publishers. So there are a number of different ways that you can do this. The one that I recommend to a lot of folks is Business Source Complete. Business Source Complete is sort of a flagship business publication tool that aggregates resources. Everything is diverse from mainstream publications like Forbes and Bloomberg Business Week to more niche publications like trade journals, SWOT analyses, things like that, and then also academic publications. So I'm going to give you just some interesting, I'll just kind of play around with this and see what kinds of things I can find out. I'm going to do a search for genetic testing. All right. So you can see the kinds of publications that are available when you do. This is, again, a very clunky search that I've done here. This could be narrowed down considerably by looking at source type. So if I'm here and I take a look at this, you'll see all the different tools that are available, different types of publications. And as I mentioned before, SWOT analysis is one of those. So if I go in and I look at this, I get at least one SWOT analysis. but there's other types of sources that are available too. And I mentioned this briefly, but trade journals, I think for any entrepreneur, and I've heard lots of faculty, lots of researchers say that when you're in an industry, regardless of what it is, knowing of the trade associations and trade journals that sort of dominate that industry and speak to people within that industry, it's really, really important to do that. You can find content about trade journals, regarding trade journals within Business Source Complete. The other thing that I want to mention is that within Business Source Complete, you can search other databases at the same time. One of those that I think might be really helpful in this case with Bernardo's topic is Medline, which is a medical database. And this is going to dramatically increase the number of results that I get because I'm now searching not only Business Source Complete, but I'm also searching Medline. And I could even go in and add term here, which is related to his question. And you can see probably some of the terms that come up and some of the topics that come up, which are very over my head. But there's a lot of different ways to find this type of information. Other things that you can use, and I do recommend that you do this, is within the databases list, you'll also see a link to Google Scholar. Google Scholar is a really good resource for finding academic peer-reviewed publications. And I know a lot of people would say, well, why on earth would I want to read some crazy academic journal? I think that the big reason is that a lot of you are working with innovation in industries like healthcare and technology, where people are really analyzing those things in higher education and kind of at the forefront of understanding nuances and challenges within that area, within those areas. So that's really why I recommend you take a look at this. And again, I'll do a search for IT security, and let's just say, we'll just add a word risks just to see what comes up. And you can see the different types of resources. Again, it's going to be super techie stuff, but it may be relevant for you to look at and see the kinds of content that is available there. So again, I access that through the library's databases. And I did that because I want to be able to see these find full text at Temple links and make sure that I can actually get to the full text content. So just make sure that you go to the databases link should you choose to use Google Scholar. Right, that is sort of a crash course and looking at academic databases, library databases. We're getting low on time here, but I did want to mention to you a couple other things. One is the research guides. Again, there's a link on this page, but you can go directly to guides.temple.edu. And under business, you can see some of the guides that I've created. And I'll just, I won't do all of them, but I did want to mention small business development, guides.temple.edu/small business. To Merrick's point about funding sources, you can see there is a list here. No guarantees that any of these will get you vast riches, but just know that these are some of the tools that I've managed to pull together from the free web. There's also government sources link here about small business and entrepreneurship related sites and entities. And then the other thing that I think is really good to know about is this link to business plans and pitch decks, sample business plans and pitch decks. Business Plan Handbook is available through the libraries, and it gives you sample business plans from all kinds of industries. And you're not writing a business plan in a traditional sense, but I still think looking at old school business plans can be really good for understanding all the different facets of what it's like to run a business. I'll just do a search for consulting just to show you what's available. And here's an IT tech consulting archival consulting business. That's interesting. So this is a, a very kind of business plan 1.0, but I still think the way that it sort of chunks out the different facets of running a business can be really good to look at. And that can be a, helpful way of understanding kind of running a business. So again, that's available through Business Plans Handbook. That's linked in a number of these guides. I'm not able to get to, actually, maybe if I do this. Yeah, there we go. That's available through the Small Business Development Guide and other guides under the business link if you go to guides.temple.edu and click under business. I'd also recommend that you look at the marketing guide and the general business research guide for the Fox School that I've created. So that's a lot of stuff to take in, probably more than anyone could handle. But I did, again, want to just make sure that if you have questions, if you need assistance, you can certainly reach out to me, and I would be happy to kind of have a more targeted conversation with you about your specific business plan, your ideas, and where we can go to get good information for you about doing that. So are there any questions now or other things I can touch on?
Now's a good time to ask, because tomorrow Adam's calendar might book up quickly.
Hi, so I was wondering, do you have any insight on where the data from CB Insights and websites like Crunchbase gets their information from?
Right. Yeah. So I think some of it is, the VC data, some of that is publicly available, and some of it is just aggregated. They also do a really good job of like combing through trade journals, blogs, and other resources like that. So they really are sort of functioning as an aggregator. IBIS World is, they are generating their own data, and they do disclose some of their methodologies. Euromonitor is the same way. Euromonitor is very primary in the way that they get their information. They have people within those different markets actually collecting data. So most of these guys, CB Insights, Euromonitor, they really have kind of like a pretty established reputation for their information. What I would say also, I'm not answering your question super directly, but I'd say the fact that you have multiple places to go to get that information, I think it's good to kind of use all of those tools, because it can really help you sort of synthesize and understand, oh, well, Crunchbase, this site says this about a company's funding, and this one says this. It may not be that they're contradicting each other. It may be that their methodologies are different. But yeah, I would say a lot of that really is coming from trade journals and disclosures about venture capital firms from their annual reports or SEC filings, things like that.
And self-reported, like in Crunchbase, I know companies go in and they update their own data.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I see Susan has raised her hand.
Susan, do you want to go ahead?
Yes. Yes. Sorry. I have a quick question regarding just getting data about consumer information and consumer habits. How do you know if the consumer habit is associated with what the product you're selling or service you're selling? Because sometimes I could see that there's certain factors that could be related to like certain consumers and certain zip codes, but then there's like other factors where I'm not sure how it will benefits how this raw data will benefit my business, or what does it say about consumer need in that area?
Yeah, so what I would say, Greg, were you about to?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, what I would say, and I didn't do a very good job of, I was flying by the seat of my pants there, but within Simply Analytics, those MRI data can be very, it's not just lifestyles and demographic stuff. It can be very specific things like who buys an Android phone versus who buys an iPhone, who drives a Ford versus a Chevy, blah, 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 who buys what kind of toothpaste even. MRI data, it's like tens of thousands of variables. So some of it is not even just how a lifestyle or attitude correlates to buying a product, it is actually buying that product. We also have an MRI Simmons database, which will provide you not only with those kinds of indicators, but also with the capacity to cross-tabulate with lifestyle data. So that's available in the list of databases. It's called MRI Simmons, and it will, it's a much more kind of, it's yet another kind of nitpicky database with a lot of query generation that you have to do on your end, but it's a very useful tool to answer those kinds of questions.
Are there any other questions?
Oh yeah. So these tools, are they like licensed as like third-party tools to Temple University, or does this come from Temple University itself? And if so, do other universities do this as well?
Yeah, other universities, and I would also say certainly not as robustly, but public libraries. The Free Library of Philadelphia is a really good resource and has a pretty good entrepreneurship community and a small business center as well. So yeah, they are licensed to Temple University, purchased mostly by the libraries. There's some exceptions. Fox has some things and some other entities on campus, mostly library databases though. But what I would encourage folks, again, if you're not a Temple person, reach out to me first and foremost. If you are in the community, Free Library is great. And they even have a few things like Reference USA comes to mind that Temple does not have. So there are other places to get these types of resources.
I'll throw in one other plug here for BRIC, which is the
Right.
Business Resource Information Center at the Philadelphia Free Public Library. They're also, I believe, the regional location for the Philadelphia Patent, or for the U.S. Patent Office.
Oh, awesome.
And
Okay.
so if you are interested in researching what patents might exist for potentially an idea, an invention that you've come up with, or if you've come up with something and you're looking to see, is this something I could then go patent? You can go there and get all kinds of help and guidance on researching it. But then also, if you decided to pursue it, if you feel you've got a decent claim on a potential patent, they can give you some guidance on how to file a provisional patent. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go do that all on your own, although I do know some people who've done that. But it's a great place. It's a free resource. They'll provide you that kinds of information and guidance. And then if you think you've got something to do, I'd encourage you to come back to me and talk to me about it, because we have law firms, very respected, well-known law firms in the city who work with the Temple IEI and will provide some free guidance along those lines. And then when you make the point to pull the trigger, yes, you're going to have to, hire a lawyer to probably do what you need to get done. But we can get you part of the way down that road between BRIC and the services they provide, and then being able to, point you to a couple different sources to get that kind of help. All right.
Is that hold true? Thank you for that information. Sorry. Does that also hold true for trademark? Like when it comes up for if your trademark is already published in the Gazette, made it past the 30 days without opposition, does that also hold true for coming to you, or, whereas you have to file it the 5th to 6th year from that published date, and then the 10th year? Do the lawyers have, have access as Temple alumni to that resource as well 5 years from now?
Well, I'm going to try to answer what I think the question is. At BRIC, they can also, it's not just patents, it's patents, trademarks, copyrights. Okay.
Got it.
So they can help you do searches. They can help you, help guide you on either how to file it or how to protect it. Okay. But they're not, I'm not saying that they are lawyers at Brick that will provide services, legal services for you. All right.
Right.
I don't believe that's within their list of services they provide. But if you go and you research it and get the information you need, and then need to talk to a lawyer, yes, then I have some lawyers I can point you to that'll do some free consultations. They won't do filings and things for you unless you hire them, but they'll give you some free guidance on it. And then also up on Startup Tree, which I mentioned earlier, we actually have a Temple alum who is a trademark lawyer, and she's a mentor on the platform. And she's also available for you to book appointments with her and bounce those kinds of questions off of.
Thank you.
Yeah, her name is Dana Dixon, if you want to look her up on Startup Tree.
Dana Dixon. Thank you so much.
Yep. All right, well, I think we're really out of time here because I still have a few more things I need to cover at the end of this program. But
all right.
Adam, thank you so much for coming on again tonight. It's always a pleasure to have you.
All right, and best of luck to everyone. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thanks, Adam. All right. I know it's a lot to digest, folks. I believe me. I've heard Adam speak now about 5 times, and I still find it hard to absorb everything that he shares. But he's very accessible. He will readily, take your questions, help guide you on how to do the research, and in some cases, I know for alumni, because they may not have access to some of these databases, he'll even go in and run that for you. So please take advantage of his, his offer. All right, quickly, in the last 10 minutes here, I want to just cover a few more things related to your Be Your Own Boss submission and why it's important. Why did we invite Adam tonight to do all this research? Because as part of your submission, you need to talk about what that market opportunity is. So how big is that market? What market segments are you specifically targeting within that market? What's your value proposition, which I'm not going to get into too much tonight, but market size is also really important. All right. So when you're talking about the market segments, okay, it's very helpful to build a customer persona. Take a sheet of paper and write down all the characteristics you can think about related to that customer. Why is that important? Because it might help give you some insights on what things you might want to research when you're looking at your target market and researching that target market. As Adam showed you, there are hundreds of variables that you can select from to research and to get at the size of the market or the location of the market, right? Also, you may have identified several target market segments. And so you might want to be thinking about, well, which one do you want to prioritize? If you propose as in your submission that you're going to address all of the target markets at once, that might seem like a real stretch from an investor's perspective. They might be looking at that and thinking you're really biting off more than you can chew. So you might want to try to prioritize that. And then again, research. That's the focus of tonight, is getting the research tools in your hands. So investors want to know, how big is this market? All right. And you're going to certainly be able to go out and take a look at that. But they're really interested in, and let me go back again here a second. There's a difference between the total market, your serviceable market, and then the serviceable attainable market. What you can actually do something with. So I'm going to use this example. To try to help you better understand that. If I was launching a company and it was focused on offering energy efficient replacement windows, all right, I might start by saying, well, how big is the total construction market worldwide? All right. Or what's the total market for windows and door sales worldwide? 172 billion, that's a big market, but that's not your market, because that's not what you're focused on. You're not focused on all windows and door sales worldwide. You're focused on energy efficient replacement windows, all right? So that excludes new construction, all right? Serviceable available market is narrowing that down a little further. So North America, let's say that's your focus, because that's really where you're going to be launching your business, not worldwide. So that market size shrinks from 172 to only $29.5 billion. Still a huge market, still a big number to possibly show to an investor. But again, I would encourage you not to do that, because that's still not your market. That's still all windows and door sales within North America. So now if I want to go look even further, because I'm working on energy efficient, right? So green windows and doors, okay, with smart glass technology, let's say. And also, again, it's the replacement window market, not new construction. That market now narrows down to only 6.6 billion. Now, from an investor's perspective, that's still huge. If you're talking about a market that has in the billions, a market potential in the billions, that's huge. But it's important that you know you're going in with the right number, because if you show that 172 billion number in the beginning as part of your presentation, as part of your pitch, you're instantly telling an investor that you don't really understand your market, because you're really not going after a global window and door sales market. All right, so I encourage you to just be very, very careful about how you position it. Let me see the question. Does TAM in this instance include the revenue pool of your competitors? Yeah, it does. It's the total number of customers times the total value of the product or service you're providing. You multiply those two together, that would come up with your total TAM. All right, now, and again, in this particular case, the number that's important for you to really be showing is not that 172 billion number. The number that's important for you to be showing is that 6.6 billion number, because that tells the investor you really know who your target is, as opposed to just this giant worldwide. And I'll give you another real quick example of that. If you were trying to design and develop and sell cup holders for cars, all right, you wouldn't be telling an investor that your target market, your market is $220 billion, because that's the value of total car sales globally. That's not your market. That's the market for total global sales of cars, not of cup holders. All right, so you'd need to know, well, how many cars have been sold and how many cup holders per car, and that might that then determines, okay, this is the potential number of cup holders you'd be selling times the value of that cup holder would then give you your total market value. But your total market value isn't the value of all cars sold, it's the value of all cup holders sold. So you have to do a little digging and a little slicing and dicing. And again, this is where Adam is great at being able to help you think that through as to how you approach that, right? Okay, this is a great video. I'm not going to show it tonight, but this link is in the slide deck, and the slide decks are going to be in the resource folder. So please feel free to go ahead and watch this video. It's about 6 minutes long, and it gives you a really good description of how to approach the total addressable market. Another thing we talked about for tonight is competition and the competitive landscape, right? And knowing not just how big it is, not just who's in it, but also what are the advantages and strengths for those competitors and how you compare to them, but also what are the barriers to entry. And what I mean by barriers to entry is not what are the difficulties you will have entering that market, but it's can you create barriers to entry for other people to come in and compete with you. So for example, if you've got a potential for filing a patent to protect your technology, if you did that, that's a barrier to entry for another competitor to come into that market, because now they would have to enter the market with some kind of a design that's different, that doesn't infringe on your patent. So you've created a barrier for them. All right, so it's important to understand which way that barrier to entry actually works. All right, other things to think about when you're doing your competitive analysis, and some of these are, I want to show this quickly because some of these are things people just generally don't even think of, okay? You're not just looking for the gaps or the overlaps between your product and your competitors, right? The gaps are really important. That's where you can add value and you can differentiate your product from what other people have out there. The overlaps, that's kind of a given. You know, you're going to have to provide some of the same benefits and same features that your competitors are providing. But if you can provide more value because you filled some gaps that your competitors didn't know about, that puts you up at a higher level with your customers. You know, certainly price is always one. People want to know what's your price compared to the competitors. Marketing and sales channels is important, but not always thought about. Are you making it easy for your customers to learn about your product or service and to buy your product or service? You know, the thing that your customers might dislike the most about their competitor, your competitor, is the way your competitors reaching your customer, the way your competitors selling the customer, selling to the customer. Things like service and warranty, right? Hyundai got a foothold in the market, in the US market with automobiles, because they were the only one offering a 10-year warranty when they first entered the US market. All other US manufacturers were only offering a 3-year warranty. Well, Hyundai was new. They needed to overcome that fear of this new upstart company. So they offered a 10-year warranty that nobody could match. All right. So warranty, service, how easy it is to purchase. Is it easy to use? How compatible is it with your daily routine? Is it something that people can easily observe or try themselves that would help them adapt and want to buy your product? All right. If your product is more observable or more trialable, that's definitely a competitive advantage over your competition. All right. Certainly your cost to manufacture it and to deliver it, any capital expenses, and the relationship that you build with your customers. These are all ways you can build a competitive advantage over the competition. And I want to cover this quickly. Is, you know, most people will look to show their competitive advantage using a tab or I'll say a tabulated formula like this, a grid. All right, this is what we encourage you to do. And the benefits that are listed down in here may be benefits for customers, and it may also be benefits to your potential investors. So for example, the equipment cost for launching a location for Farmer's Fridge or Bite or Simply Good Jars, you can see Simply Good Jars is 5 times lower than Farmer's Fridge. Well, as a customer, they're not going to care about that. But as an investor, that's a competitive advantage, because it says I could put, for the same amount of money, I could be in 5 locations with my Simply Good Jars product as compared to my Farmer's Fridge product. All right, so it's important to think about both. Here's another great video that walks you through how to do a competitive analysis framework, and then again reinforces how to show that competitive analysis in your slide pitch deck. We already talked about, Adam's talked about all the resources available through the Temple Library. Here are some other things that you might want to think about. And I'm just going to show this. It's in the slide deck. You can come back and take a look at it when you go through the slides yourself. But there's tons of information out there. The more knowledgeable you are about your industry, about your markets, and about your competitors, the more believable you are, the more confident investors will be in you, the more trust they'll have in you, and it lowers the risk level for them. And it's all about making investors feel comfortable in what it is that you're proposing. All right, Adam's already shared those. If you can, before you drop off, we'd like to have you take just this quick 4-question survey about the program tonight. I'll leave this up here for just a second, and then I'll give you the QR codes for the FLDP points if you were participating in the workshop tonight and would like to get your FLDP points. I'll then show that. And here it is for undergrads. And that's it for tonight. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to stay on. Thank you for staying through the whole program, and I'm sorry we ran a little bit late, but if you do have any other questions, I'll hang on for a bit. Thank you, Susan.